Kenya entrepreneurs have high hopes for President Barack Obama's upcoming visit. Old Cold War foes reestablish diplomatic ties after 5 decades. And another storm is brewing, and it's headed straight for the U.S. Capitol. We'll have the details. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lenore Moudou. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari is in Washington for a 4-day visit, which includes talks Monday at the White House with President Barack Obama, which are wrapping up this hour. Mr. Buhari has vowed to make every effort to free more than 200 schoolgirls abducted by Boko Haram militants a year ago. The threat posed by the Islamist terrorist group is expected to top the agenda as President Obama welcomes the Nigerian leader to the White House for the first time. The U.S. is seeking to expand assistance to Nigeria in fighting the militants who have intensified their attacks since Mr. Buhari took office in May. A short time ago at the White House, Mr. Obama spoke about President Buhari's visit.
The people of Nigeria understand that only through a peaceful political process can change take place. President Buhari comes into office with a reputation for integrity and a very clear agenda, and that is to make sure that he is bringing safety and security and peace to his country.
Washington quickly reached out to new President Buhari upon his election victory in March and dispatched a U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, to his inauguration to underscore America's interest in working with his government. For more on Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari's visit to Washington, VOA's Aliu Mustafa joins us live from the White House. Aliu, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lenore. How are you doing?
Doing very well. Listen, obviously Boko Haram was top on the agenda during the discussion between both presidents. Tell us about that and also other topics that topped the agenda.
Well, both countries have their plate full in terms of what they are going to be able to achieve in about 3 days. Muhammadu Buhari is coming to Washington with a lot of demands in his bag, and the United States is looking forward to starting what they call a fresh page in discussion these issues with Nigeria. You started to mention the issue of Chibok girls, the Boko Haram. Obviously, the security matter is at the top of the agenda. But in addition to the security, there's also going to be a lot of discussion on economy, on healthcare. A lot of investors from both countries are hoping to network with each other and see where they can go with their new relationship. But both countries need one another. The United States needs Nigeria, which is the giant of Africa, from any angle you look at it, economically, politically, socially. But Nigeria also absolutely needs the United States to be able to win the war against Boko Haram, to gain a foothold in the global affairs. Nigeria has been left behind in many areas. So both countries have so much to look forward to achieving in their discussion.
So a very important visit indeed for both countries, as you mentioned.
Yes, it is extremely important. As you know, the relationship between the United States and the last administration of Nigeria cannot be said to be absolutely great. So this is a chance for them to get back to work together, like President Obama pointed out. Muhammadu Buhari comes with integrity, and a lot of Nigerians have high expectations on what he should be able to resolve and what he can practically resolve in such a short time. Already, as you know, he has not formed his cabinet. Nigerians are getting a little bit impatient, but Buhari is assuring everybody that he needs time to see what has happened in the last 16 years. So he is coming to the United States, and because of the importance that the United States attaches to Nigeria, it is given prominence to this visit. A lot of higher-level officials are going to meet Muhammadu Buhari, including members on the Hill, business people, and political leaders.
So what else is on the agenda for President Buhari?
Well, Buhari is going to be meeting with Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of State, obviously, U.S. Trade Representative. He's already met former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. He's going to be meeting Nigerians, obviously, at the Nigerian embassy, and he's going to meet the youth, and he's going to do a whole bunch of networking.
So very quickly then, what are the expectations for the Nigerian community here?
Oh my God, Nigerians everywhere are looking. I mean, they have so much. First of all, he has to deal with the issue of security. That is the top for everybody. But also Nigeria is going through lack of power supply. The hospitals are in dilapidated position. And almost every sector of the economy needs some help from the new government, which is why a lot of Nigerians want him to get going as quickly as possible.
Okay, Aliu, thank you so much for reporting.
You're welcome. Thank you, Leonard.
And that was Aliu Mustafa reporting live from the White House. Now, all this week on Africa 54, we'll be talking about President Barack Obama's trip to Africa later in the week. It's Mr. Obama's fourth trip to Africa, where he will visit his father's homeland of Kenya, attend a global entrepreneurship summit in Nairobi, and meet with regional leaders at the African Union in Ethiopia. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, will travel with the president. She discussed the trip on VOA's Straight Talk Africa program. VOA's Paul Cisco reports.
I stand before you as the President of the United States and a proud American. I also stand before you as the son of a man from Africa.
Building on progress made at the U.S. African Leaders Summit in Washington last summer, President Obama travels to Africa. He'll attend the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in Nairobi, Kenya on July 25th and 26th before moving on to Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa.
There are people who feel that perhaps, in fact, the president shouldn't be going to Addis Ababa. Why?
For us, the president's trip to Ethiopia is an important stop. It's an important stop that will convey to the government and people of Ethiopia our commitment to supporting their efforts in fighting terrorism, but also will be an opportunity to use the voice of the president to convey messages to the government of Ethiopia regarding human rights, regarding press freedom, and to ensure that this government continues efforts that will put Ethiopia in the right place when it comes to human rights.
The president will meet with the Ethiopian leadership, visit the headquarters of the African Union, and address its leadership. The African visit comes as a deadly civil war rages on between the forces of South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar.
And the solution is peace, and neither one of them have been willing to set aside their own goals to move in that direction.
Let's go to the issue of Burundi, the Burundi crisis.
She also explained the U.S. position on term limits in light of Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial bid for a third term and a similar push in Rwanda for President Paul Kagame.
Consistently, we have stated that we do not support any government that changes its constitution to extend term limits that benefits the president who is in power. And it doesn't matter what country that is.
With this trip, the president reaffirms America's support for the emerging continent and will continue raising good governance issues with his African counterparts.
To the new Africa, the Africa that is rising and so full of promise, and to our shared task to keep on working for the peace and prosperity and justice that all our people seek and that all our people so richly deserve.
Paul Cisco, VOA News, Washington.
Kenya's 2015 economic survey shows the informal sector employed 11.8 million people last year, working in small and often unregulated businesses. Lenny Ruvaga profiles a businessman in the informal sector about his challenges and hopes for President Barack Obama's visit.
Joseph Omondi works on an earthen stove at his workshop in Korogosho on the outskirts of Kenya's capital, Nairobi. He began working with metal 4 years ago to provide for himself and his young family. Every day, he produces pans, pots, and metal boxes. On average, his business makes $300 a month. Being a low-skilled worker meant that Omondi couldn't join the country's formal employment sector, so he turned to small-scale production. Omondi hopes that the Entrepreneurial Summit will help businesses like his access international markets. especially the U.S.
My prayer is, or rather I hope, when President Obama comes, he gives us advice on how small-scale businesses can access the American market, and then we'll have benefited from the summit. This is my hope.
A new report by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa says Kenya has the highest informal sector employment in Africa, in large part because the more formal economy can't absorb all the would-be workers. Close to 16 million Kenyans have no formal employment. The government has programs to help youth acquire much-needed capital, such as the Youth Enterprise Fund and the Uwezo Fund, which offers loans to young adults and women starting businesses at zero interest. Kwame Owino at the Institute of Economic Affairs, IEA, a research group that focuses on fiscal accountability, says entrepreneurial support could spark industrialization in Africa.
So it's obviously inevitable. Now, whether that will happen in each and every African country is entirely a different thing, because every country has its own peculiar policy problems that they need to fix. But yes, I think entrepreneurial innovation is required for most of the African continent.
In a few weeks, Kenya will host the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, the first to be held in sub-Saharan Africa, emphasizing the importance of entrepreneurship needed to spark industrialization on the continent. Lenya Ruvaga for VOA News, Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, during his visit to Africa, President Obama will also make a historic visit to Ethiopia. He will be the first sitting U.S. president to visit the East African nation and the Addis Ababa headquarters of the African Union. Ethiopian officials say his visit could present an opportunity to further their relationship.
It's very significant because, as you know, Ethiopia and America had a very amicable and excellent relationship, for over a century now. So, all this time, we had, visitors actually, but a sitting president will be visiting for the first time, my country, Ethiopia. So this will be opening up a new chapter in the relationship between the U.S. and Ethiopia.
And African Union officials say during Mr. Obama's visit, they hope to address key issues such as peace and security, energy, and agriculture. Now, a special court in Senegal began a long-awaited trial Monday against former Chadian ruler Hissène Habré on charges of crimes against humanity. The 72-year-old Habré and his lawyers have dismissed the court as lacking due process and say they will not take part in the trial, but he was present Monday after authorities forced him to appear. The court, established under an agreement with the African Union, is due to hear from 100 witnesses during the trial. Human Rights Watch called the trial a, quote, milestone in the fight to hold the perpetrators of atrocities accountable for the crimes in Africa and the world. Spokesman Reed Brody says it's also a chance for justice.
This is a chance to show that an African court can deliver justice for African victims for crimes committed in Africa. It's one thing to complain about having abusive African presidents and leaders sent to The Hague. It's another thing to show that they can be prosecuted and get a fair trial here in Africa.
Rights groups and a Chad Truth Commission accuse Mr. Habré of being responsible for more than 40,000 political killings, systematic tortures, and other violations during his time as president. He led the country between 1982 and 1990 when he was deposed by current leader Idriss Déby and fled to Senegal. Human Rights Watch says the case marks the first time a court in one country is prosecuting the former ruler of another country for alleged human rights violations. This is a departure from the last 13 years during which similar cases have been brought by the International Criminal Court in The Hague. But the ICC has faced criticism for solely pursuing charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity against Africans and securing only 2 convictions since it began operating in 2002. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, After 5 decades, it's a new day in U.S.-Cuba relations. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
India is moving aggressively to strengthen its trade relationship with Africa. Their bilateral trade doubled in the past 7 years and will reach nearly $90 billion this year, with a focus on information, communication, and technology, or ICT.
It's more about ICT, agribusiness, exports and manufacturing.
Alex Vines heads the Africa program at Chatham House and says India's approach to investment in Africa is led through the private sector, whereas China, Africa's top trading partner, is led by the state. But there are a lot of Chinese nationals already working in Africa.
On the whole, Indian companies do seem to tend to look for more local content, hire more local people than the Chinese.
Vines says African countries need to find employment for their own people. There's a huge India-Africa summit planned for October, with representatives of 54 countries invited to New Delhi. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
The Obama administration is continuing a media blitz to promote a landmark nuclear deal with Iran to an American public distrustful of Tehran. VOA's Michael Bowman reports the lengthy, complicated, and highly technical pact unveiled in Vienna last week is proving to be a tough sell to nearly all Republican legislators and even some Democrats who have 60 days to review and vote on the accord.
Did Iran win too many concessions while giving up too little? Secretary of State John Kerry says no.
The United Nations resolution, which brought about the sanctions in the first place, said that if Iran will suspend its enrichment and come to negotiations, all the sanctions will be lifted. Now, they've done more than just come to negotiations. They've actually negotiated a deal.
Key lawmakers remain unconvinced and angry the United Nations could approve the deal before Congress has a chance to weigh in.
The president is going to go to the UN Security Council Tuesday before Congress has done its work. I mean, at just a base level, that's highly problematic. I'm very concerned that with all that's happened, what that's going to mean is that they're going to be agreeing to an agreement that they don't even know they can implement.
Not so, according to Kerry.
They have a right to have a vote, but we prevailed on them to delay the implementation of that vote out of respect for our Congress.
Even some Democrats most loyal to President Barack Obama are not committing to a yes vote.
We have 2 months, and we're going to use that time to better understand this. And I respect the fact that this is not an easy decision for members to make, and I plan to take the time to understand it before I make my decision.
The president will need the backing of Cardin and others to prevent Congress from overriding his veto of likely congressional votes disapproving the deal.
This deal will make America and the world safer and more secure. Still, you're going to hear a lot of overheated and often dishonest arguments about it in the weeks ahead.
Meanwhile, Iran's supreme leader and top cleric pledged to continue his country's assertive role across the Middle East, adding that, should war come, the United States would suffer humiliation. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
The United States and Cuba reached a milestone in diplomatic relations on Monday. The two countries have formally reopened their embassies, a move that is part of a series of recent steps to restore diplomatic ties that began to sour more than 50 years ago. The Cuban flag was raised today at Havana's embassy in Washington. The symbolic event was followed by a meeting at the State Department between U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Bruno Rodriguez, the first Cuban foreign minister of an official visit to Washington since the 1959 Cuban Revolution. Even before the Cubans held their ceremony, the U.S. Interests section in Havana, long serving as Washington's de facto diplomatic post there, issued a statement announcing that on Monday it, quote, officially became U.S. Embassy Havana. For more on the renewed U.S.-Cuba diplomatic relations, here is VOA State Department correspondent Pam Dunkins.
In 1961, a U.S.-backed force invaded a southern Cuban shore known as the Bay of Pigs as part of an effort to oust Cuba's Fidel Castro. The failed attempt contributed to a downward spiral in U.S.-Cuba relations that would last for decades. In May, as an outward sign of how relations had thawed, President Obama and Cuban President Raul Castro greeted each other with handshakes at the Summit of the Americas in Panama. Earlier this month, President Obama said the move to reestablish ties was long overdue.
When the United States shuttered our embassy in 1961, I don't think anyone expected that it would be more than half a century before it reopened.
The change is a result of both domestic and foreign pressure, says Cuba specialist William Leo Grand.
The Latin Americans had really become fed up with this old, anachronistic Cold War policy, and they let the president know at the 6th Summit of the Americas in Cartagena, Colombia in 2012, and said they wouldn't come to the next one if Cuba wasn't invited.
The Cuban interest section, the building behind me, becomes the Cuban embassy. For many Cubans, that transformation means hope.
The dam has broken. This has been tremendous. I don't think anybody expected on December 17th, when the president made his remarks, that this is where we'd be only 6 to 8 months in the future.
But some say the new U.S. policy rewards bad behavior.
And I think we have had to lower our standards in order to raise our flag in Havana. We aren't defending human rights. We aren't defending the very idea of representative democracy.
Also, while some Cubans are praising their government for establishing ties with the U.S., the reality is that some U.S.-Cuba transactions remain restricted under the U.S. trade embargo. Pam Dawkins, VOA News, the State Department.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The fishiest weather system ever is heading for Washington, D.C. We'll be right back.
Nigeria will remain ever grateful to President Obama and the United States.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Heads up, Washington, D.C., Sharknado 3, oh hell no, is headed your way. If you missed the original Sharknado and the sequel, Sharknado 2, the second one, take heart. Yet another incarnation of the sci-fi's biting TV movie about waterspouts picking up sharks and depositing them on major cities is about to hit the screen. The fishy weather system is headed to Washington, D.C. and Florida this time. And Ziring and Tara Reid are back along with Bo Derek, Rick Fox, Kendra Wilkinson, David Hasselhoff, and Holly Madison. The movie airs on Sci-Fi on July 22nd. And next up, a social media platform with a difference. A group of Brazilian evangelical Christians have come up with a new networking site they have called Face Gloria. Violence, sexual topics, and obscenities are banned from the site. The equivalent of a like is amen. More than 600 offensive or obscene words, along with erotic content, violence, and any reference to homosexuality are banned from Face Gloria. The conservative social networking site has already attracted at least 120,000 users since its launch in June. And finally, a Taiwan exhibition shows the potential of intelligent robots. Those teddy bears aren't just cute, they're accomplishing complex tasks with high flexibility. Medicine is one area where there have been great advances in technology for robotic solutions. The precision of robots is particularly exciting for surgical procedures. Of course, the benefits to industry can already be seen. Automated intelligence machines will be in charge of all the heavy lifting and capable of undertaking the most complex of tasks. And that's what's trending today. Now, for one surfer in Australia, the weekend was just a little too exciting. For the details, here's Sonny Young with the sunny side of sports.
Exciting indeed, Lenore. Sporty greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. Let's begin in South Africa's beach town of Jeffreys Bay, where a three-time world champion surfer has survived a scary shark attack. Mick Fanning was paddling out to ride his first wave when the unidentified species of shark surfaced next to him, knocking the 34-year-old Australian off his board. Fanning fought off the shark with his fists, hitting it on its back before the shark swam off. The Australian surfer was visibly shaken as he waited for a support boat to return him safely to shore. Once on the boat, Fanning talked about the tense encounter.
I was just sitting there, I was just about to just start moving, and then I felt something grab, got stuck in my leg rope, and I instantly just jumped away, and then it just kept coming at my board, and I just was kicking and screaming, and wow.
See some teeth? You get some teeth?
I just saw fins. I didn't see the teeth. I was waiting for the teeth to come at me as I was swimming. I was like, ah!
Did you get a couple punches in?
I punched it in the back, yeah.
South Africa's waters are among the most shark-infested in the world. A swimmer was killed by a great white shark near Jeffreys Bay in 2013. Now let's go to a coastal town here in the United States for another beach story with a happy ending. Harlem Globetrotters basketball player Bull Bullard treated beachgoers to some trick shots in the eastern U.S. town of Wildwood, New Jersey. Bullard showed off his shooting ability at a lifeguard stand on the beach and then a nearby water park, making some amazing long-distance shots, which were even more amazing considering the gusty winds in the area. Bullard and the Globetrotters later performed their famous basketball show in the southern New Jersey beach town. Nothing but net, Bull Bullard. I'm VOA Sonny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Lenore?
Thanks, Sonny. Be sure to watch the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday on Africa 54. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Americans love sports. Football, basketball, baseball, and tennis. So sometimes American English uses sports to describe something.
Now the ball is in your court.
But what exactly are they talking about?
Hey, I heard that Sam asked you to go to dinner with him. Are you going to go? He's so cute. I don't know. Well, it sounds like the ball is in your court now.
Sounds like somebody needs to make a decision or take some action. When somebody tells you the ball is in your court, it means the next decision or action is up to you. Like a tennis match. If the ball's in your court, you have an option to hit the ball or let the ball go right by you. This is a strong expression, and it's usually used when a decision needs to be made soon. And that's English in a Minute.